The Jewish Channel's Week in Review. How Warren Buffett is becoming a role model for Kabbalists, protesting clowns bring their act home to the U.S., it's Israeli Independence Day, do you know where your community is, and much more of the Jewish news that's changing your world in this webcast version of the Jewish Channel's Week in Review. Hello, and welcome to the Jewish Channel's Week in Review. I'm Stephen I. Weiss. Israel's Independence Day, or Yom HaAtzmaut, was celebrated this week, and we at the Jewish Channel found relatively few events planned for the occasion. Perhaps we simply expected more after last year's many 60th anniversary-related goings-on, but between two of the most significant Jewish events listings in our headquarters city of New York, we found a total of just 5 events listed for the entirety of New York City. Calls by our staff to more than a dozen organizations found that some were having smaller events that they'd failed to list, but many said they had no plans to commemorate Israeli Independence Day, such as the Young Israel of the West Side, at which the person who answered one of our reporters' phone calls said they, quote, have no good reason or explanation for not having an event for the day. Others, like Congregation Road of Shalom, told us that they plan to acknowledge the day by marching in the Salute to Israel parade on May 31st. We're not really sure what this dearth of events to celebrate Israel means, and we're not going to guess what it says about attitudes towards Israel in today's Jewish community. But the sheer lack of pro-Israel happenings on the day was something we found surprising and noteworthy, and we thought you would find it so as well. Nonetheless, one event gathered 1,500 young people, and even Mayor Michael Bloomberg joined the party. Christian Needham reports.
The hip, young, and Zionist of New York area Jews gathered aboard a retired U.S. warship Tuesday night to celebrate Israeli independence. The event, organized by Dor Hadash, was held inside the USS Intrepid Air Sea Space Museum. It was a time to meet and mingle with hundreds of other young Jews in a celebratory atmosphere that turned into a dance party after hours. But before those in attendance had an opportunity to drink and socialize amidst the military relics of America's past wars, they also remembered the more than 22,000 Israeli soldiers who have died in combat since 1948 as part of an Israeli Memorial Day, or Yom HaZikaron, ceremony.
It was not an accident that these 2 days were juxtaposed. It's to remind us that without sacrifice, there would be no homeland.
In addition to cantorial and choral performances and a candlelighting ceremony, there were speeches by Dor Hadash chairman Ron Fuchs, Israeli ambassador to the United Nations Gabriela Shalev, and the featured speaker of the night, New York Mayor Michael Bloomberg, who excited the local crowd with his declarations of solidarity with Israel. He spoke of his recent trip to Israel and why good relations with the United States is an imperative.
Anybody that thinks that Israel is a country alone doesn't understand that America and Israel are inseparable, and our freedoms are the same freedoms that they want, and if they were to lose theirs, we would lose ours. We cannot let that happen.
And with the serious talk over and Israeli Independence Day officially underway, it was a time to party. More on the event, including the mayor's jokes about shuffleboard and a personal reflection on loss in Israel, can be seen in the television broadcast of the Week in Review.
Thank you, Christian. Another event for an even younger crowd was held at the Manhattan Day School, where several synagogues banded together and somewhat less than 300 people were estimated to have attended. But just because pro-Israel celebrations were somewhat muted, that doesn't mean that pro-Israel protests have ceased. Rebecca Honig-Friedman reports on further fallout from the UN World Conference on Racism.
Last week's speech by Iranian President Mahmoud Ahmadinejad received global attention, but protests by students in clown costumes reached most of that audience too. The attention those clown protests in Geneva received has generated a following with similar aspirations here in the United States. Inspired by the student protest at the Durban II conference in Geneva, students here in New York staged their own protest of the conference outside the United Nations.
Well, I think the UN needs to open their eyes. Their conference in Geneva, which is the Durban Review Conference, basically was just a Israel hate fest. And they're wasting their time ignoring all the other human rights abuses that are going on around the world.
The protest partnered a variety of Jewish organizations. As in Geneva, the students protesting in New York wore clown wigs on their heads and masking tape over their mouths, while holding signs criticizing the UN and the Iranian president.
To signify that President of Iran was in fact a clown, and that the UN is clowning around by inviting him and also focusing just on Israel and not focusing on real issues.
I think people got the message right away. You know, the tape on our lips represented the silence of the UN, and also a certain sense of apathy from people around the world, especially the United Nations.
Jonathan Gartenberg, who came up with the idea for the New York protest, said this was the first time he had taken political action, and that he was inspired to do so by a friend who had participated in the Geneva protest.
He had told me that this might have continued my momentum, so I started the event and tried to get as many people involved as I can.
More footage of the protest and interviews with participants can be seen on the television broadcast of the Week in Review. Reporting for the Jewish Channel, I'm Rebecca Honig-Friedman.
Thank you, Rebecca. Meantime, despite Iranian President Mahmoud Ahmadinejad's speech at last week's conference, and all of the rhetoric surrounding it suggesting that Zionism is racism, the final outcome document released from the conference, as predicted, contains no mention of Israel, Zionism, or Palestinians, and did warn of neo-Nazi activities. In economic news, Kabbalah may have the answers you're looking for in this economic downturn. Margie Rauhat reports.
Despite Bernie Madoff, massive layoffs, and stock markets down 40%, it turns out that a failing economy can actually be a good thing for Kabbalah.
Absolutely. Whenever there's a, breakdown, and there's challenges, uncertainty, what can I say? It's good for the spirituality business.
The Kabbalah of the economic meltdown was on the agenda in Manhattan's Upper East Side Monday night, where author Rabbi Simon Jacobson presented a comforting way to deal with the current crisis.
I think it was about, just understanding, getting a little more insight into the spiritual nature of what's going on, because that's very calming and soothing to me.
And on the Upper East Side, an area known for its wealth, the tension of economic anxiety was apparent to event organizers, who are seeing increased demand for Kabbalistic solutions to financial woes.
I don't think a lecture like this would have gotten such a good turnout a year ago. I don't think we would have even had such a topic. People are like, money is money and Kabbalah is Kabbalah. It's only now that you can bring the two together, and people were like, wow, that's great. I'd love to hear what he has to say.
So what exactly is the Kabbalah of the economic meltdown? In part, it's a message about moral values.
As the Kabbalah puts it, every challenge, every difficulty is always an opportunity to look deeper inside yourself, what your values are, what is important to you, priorities. So when money is in crisis, it's a great opportunity to look at, is money your only source of security? So the issue of diversifying your portfolio, to diversify that security shouldn't just come from money, but should also come from love, relationships, family, values, volunteerism.
But Kabbalah also has something to say about where the American economy is headed. Jacobson explained that just as a caterpillar goes through a difficult transition before it morphs into a butterfly, financial struggles allow us to grow into better people. And even our capitalist system could evolve into something better.
I think Judaism offers a new model. The new future capitalism is a capitalism that is infused with responsibility to a higher authority, infused with the responsibility to be charitable. And as I mentioned in my talk, the foundations of this country are built on that principle, that all people are created equal, and that we all are responsible for to each other and to a higher authority. Without that, capitalism, I do not think, can survive.
And more of Rabbi Jacobson's Kabbalistic insights into the economy, as well as why he thinks Warren Buffett is the right role model, may be seen in the television broadcast of the Week in Review.
Thank you, Margie. Finally, in political news, the top story for most this week is Pennsylvania Senator Arlen Specter's move from the Republican to the Democratic Party, a key move to give the majority party 60 votes. The blog Jew School astutely noted that this likely means the Senate will be without a Jewish Republican for the first time since 1957, when New York's Jacob Javits took office. Whether or not there is a Republican Jewish senator in 2009 now rests in the hands of the courts determining the outcome of the Minnesota senatorial election, in which incumbent Jewish Republican Norm Coleman faces an uphill battle to try to wrest the election from the hands of another Jewish fellow, Democrat Al Franken. That's all for our webcast. For the full Week in Review, including additional interviews, stories, and features, please visit our channel on cable television. For more news and analysis during the week, please visit newsdesk.tjctv.com. From all of us here at the Jewish Channel, be well. The Jewish Channel is available on cable, IO Optimum Cable Channel 291, Time Warner Cable Channel 528, Verizon Fios Channel 900, and Cox Cable Channel 1. For more information, please visit tjctv.com.